Well, we have some breaking news. President Donald Trump, former president, maybe future president, has made his vice presidential pick. That is Senator J.D. Vance from Ohio. J.D. Vance will be joining the ticket. That is not going to come as a surprise to our viewers. Obviously, Vance's name has been in the top 3 or 4 contenders for a long while. He was the favorite now for some time, but it has been made official. Donald Trump is picking J.D. Vance. So who is J.D. Vance? He is a figure, I would say, very much of the populist right. Author of Hillbilly Elegy, which was a book about his time growing up in Appalachia in a working class family, and kind of the effects that the economic policies like outsourcing and closing of factories had on his friends and family growing up, kind of a poverty trap sort of thing. So he talks a lot about working class issues. He obviously subsequently went on to get a law degree and become a venture capitalist affiliated and associated with Peter Thiel, someone Donald Trump has been trying to court. Thiel was a major financial supporter of Trump in 2016, but declined to aid in the re-election effort in 2020. So I wonder if that's going to be making an overture. This move is an attempt to make an overture there. But what do you make of the pick, Jessica?
I think J.D. Vance is a bit of a fraud. This is a guy who went to Yale Law School and then worked as a lawyer for an LLP for a couple of years, and then ended up going to San Francisco to work in the tech industry. He was a venture capitalist. He raised $93 million for a venture capital firm. But the same guy, J.D. Vance, decided, oh, no, I'm all about solving the opioid crisis, actually. He started a nonprofit, raised $220,000. So I guess he made different phone calls, and it produced 2 op-eds, 2 tweets, and then shuttered. There was no more to be heard of it. It failed. He also has been known to have hired a consultant through that nonprofit in 2018 that ran a poll to assess his election bid for the Senate in 2022. He hired his campaign manager out of that nonprofit. This is a guy who's lied about what the money's going to. He said it's for the opioid crisis. It ended up funding his political campaign. He's only been in the Senate since 2022. And as you mentioned, Peter Thiel was a big backer of that, $15 million worth. So he's selling this message that, oh, I'm a hero of the working class because I'm from the working class, when he's sold out the working class. He stands for big tech, the #1 job of his donor in his 2022 Senate bid. The job title was CEO, not teacher, not Lowe's employee, CEO. So that's a little bit of who J.D. Vance is. The one thing he brings to the table is he's very loyal to Donald Trump.
Yes, he is. And so when he started out kind of becoming noticed on the political scene, the news scene, obviously that was coming off the book he wrote, Hillbilly Elegy. I read it. I thought it was a very good book, to be perfectly honest. Now, in it, he's sort of describing the plight of working class people, of people who dealing with, the economic changes in the country that impacted him and his family, how addiction impacted him and his family. It really is a remarkable story of hard work and overcoming a difficult situation. It's a very moving book, and in it, he explains why why the people in his community are suffering these things without, saying that. Without just saying it's the fault of, broader forces. And he's also talking about how people need to, embrace family and hard work and socially conservative values. And then when Trump appeared on the scene, J.D. Vance initially disparaged him completely as a fraud and a fake. Actually, J.D. Vance likened Trump to Hitler numerous times, which is pretty interesting to think about. And now he's saying that anyone who makes that comparison has participated in inviting violence against Donald Trump. Describing the recent assassination attempt as motivated by some of that rhetoric. So he moved from someone who understands why Trump supporters feel the way they do, but is nevertheless very against Trump, to totally, fully committed to Trump. I'm honestly a little surprised by the pick, just that I think J.D. Vance is a very savvy, articulate explainer of the kind of Trump philosophy and worldview, and is someone who seeks the spotlight himself. Unlike Mike Pence, who is kind of a background player, I can see J.D. Vance being very vocal on behalf of the administration. He's very active on social media. He does a lot of interviews. In the theory that the presidential nominee doesn't want to share the spotlight or bring someone along who is themselves very attention-seeking. This is kind of actually counter to that. So I'm interested to see that Trump has done it, because this is a figure who obviously no one can possibly outshine Donald Trump himself in terms of media attention. But this is someone who is very much accustomed to the spotlight and does well in a media environment when he's in it.
Yeah, this is someone who hasn't even served 2 years in the Senate. So I think Donald Trump probably likes that this is not a seasoned politician. This is not someone that's going to question Donald Trump's power. They have a lot in common. I mean, Vance starting his nonprofit that was only in operation for under 5 years. It closed its doors in 2021. I don't think it ever had doors or an office that were open, given all we got out of it was 2 op-eds and 2 tweets. And of course, the polling for J.D. Vance's 2022 bid. This is someone who is willing to use those dollars, even if he writes eloquently in a book about the struggle and plight of the working class and how addiction has been, how many working class families have coped with the economic struggles that they deal with on a day-to-day basis. He might understand that and write about it very well. But at the end of the day, he sold those people out. The money that he fundraised to address the opioid crisis in Ohio, he used for his own personal gain, for his own personal power. And in that sense, I think he has a lot in common with Donald Trump. This is someone who's willing to sell America a populist message. But at the end of the day, we see that all the people who benefit are people who are elites, people who are CEOs, people who are the very wealthy like Peter Thiel. That's who they serve. So I think they have a lot in common, and this pick makes a lot of sense. What I'm curious to see now is who will serve in the Senate in Ohio. I've heard people float Vivek Ramaswamy as potentially getting that appointment. That would be very interesting to see, Robbie.
That will be interesting to see. I will be interested to see a vice presidential debate between J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris. She's certainly going to have her work cut out for her there. As I said, he is a very good debater, good arguer, a very smart, brilliant individual. I hear you criticizing him as insincerely, populist on the issues that are important to you. I'm almost going the other. I think he's too populist. He's moving, or not too populist, to left, frankly, on kind of economic issues, which is not something I generally tend to agree with. For instance, he's called Lena Khan, who's a very progressive Biden official leading the FTC, obviously, bringing all these actions against Amazon and Facebook and all sorts of other big companies. He said that he thinks she's doing a great job. So he could be someone who brings more of an antitrust attitude to governing. If Donald Trump is to get another term, which looks very likely. He's talked obviously about breaking up the tech companies, which is interesting given that he comes from sort of the related world of venture capitalism, working with Peter Thiel, an early investor in Facebook, all that sort of thing. I think it's an interesting development on the right. These figures who are they kind of crusading anti-tech people, but are actually also in good standing with other very wealthy interests in tech. So he kind of fits in there.
I think I would place him as someone who's critical of maybe the oligopoly or monopolies we've seen. I mean, Peter Thiel's PayPal isn't even in the top 50 biggest tech firms in the country. So he could be someone that's maybe against oligopolies or monopolies, which the FTC has really paid attention to and taken some action to break up. But I don't think this is someone who stands against big companies or the elites in the country, given his massive support of CEOs and people like Peter Thiel. I think what we're going to see happen is exactly what we saw on the trail in 2022, where he ran on addressing the opioid crisis, saying he was a champion of that. It came out that he wasn't. And then he was not someone who was willing to criticize big pharmaceutical companies. And so when you have donors who are CEOs and members of big tech and big pharma, you make deals, you make promises. They might say, well, I donated to his campaign because, he reflects what I'd like to see happen in my industry. And so I support his candidacy, when really what happens in those back rooms are agreements and deals. And I think because of the support we've seen in 2022 for JD Vance, I don't think we're going to see that change. I think we're going to see the same thing we saw happen under Donald Trump, where he cut taxes for corporations and created a deadline and cut taxes by a much lower margin for working and middle class people. So I think the pick makes sense because it's right in line with how Trump not ran in 2016, but how he governed 2016 to 2020.
Well, Joe Biden has responded to the pick, writing on X, here's the deal about J.D. Vance. He talks a big game about working people, but now he and Trump want to raise taxes on middle-class families while pushing more tax cuts for the rich. Obviously, the announcement itself came on Truth Social. I think that was the first time a vice presidential pick has been announced on Truth Social. Truth Social might not have even been around in the prior cycle or before that, I can't recall. So that's the announcement there from Donald Trump up on the screen. He references Hillbilly Elegy and Vance's history, some of the things I pointed out, support of American workers and farmers in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio. Obviously, these are all states that are important for Trump to win. So you can see the pick as maybe one geared at bringing as something that's going to help him in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which, like I said on the show today, are going to be the states that end up deciding this election. So I think that's maybe the strategy there is doubling down on penetration into those the Rust Belt, Midwest, white working class states, making that pitch to voters who helped Trump beat Hillary Clinton in 2016, but then did not show up in 2020, where Joe Biden won those states and the presidency. It's all going to come down to those three states yet again. We will have more to say about J.D. Vance, I'm sure, on the show tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in.